goes along really well with some of the questions I had heard when people are doing the mandalas when they're kind of.
Great.
Okay, so everyone, our next artist going to share about overcoming fear.
Fear
Yeah, fear.
of art.
Everybody has fear. Fear is the big enemy.
Good
for
timing.
everybody. Yes. So Thomas is a self-taught artist, and he is our library staff. So thank you, Thomas, for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you. That was just great. Thanks to everyone who presented already. And wow, just thank you for doing that. My story is probably a little more casual than the opening one, so you can understand that. I'm basically talking about fear of art and some of the fears that sometimes people might have. If you look at a painting, is there one real meaning to a painting? In other words, if you're at the museum and you see a field of blue, is there one particular interpretation of that painting? Are you going to get that interpretation correct? Is it like decoding a puzzle? And basically, I'm kind of talking about how that's not really how it is. So one early response to observing art is when we look at maybe some brush strokes or something like that, and we try to see maybe some patterns or faces in it, and that's kind of an early response to art as well. I'm going to go a step beyond that, and I'm going to say, first of all, a lot of times when we see a work of art, we just don't know what it is we're looking at. It's completely different. Maybe it's totally abstract, as the case with a lot of modern art. So after you get to that moment where you're like, wow, I don't know what that is, and you see all the broken glass around you, then you start to put it back together and say, well, what do I see in this work of art? If it's just a field of blue, what can I say about that? Why is it just a field of blue? Why just that color? What color of blue? Is it large or small? Is it framed in a particular way? Is it hanging sideways? At this point, when things have become fragmented, we start to put the pieces back together. So I actually brought some examples, but I don't even know. Are you guys familiar with Mark Rothko, his paintings? Yeah. So Rothko, it would be like a very large sheet of color, and it would just have little squares within it of color. So it just looks like rectangles within rectangles. So if I was to present you with something like that, just this abstract like that, how would you respond? Would you be able to summarize that and say this means X, Y, Z? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? I mean, do you think you could? If you could, I want to hear your inspiration. Like, is there a clue to that? If you're like me, it's like I see certain qualities of the painting. I see, so the painting has some orange in it. It has some turquoise. Maybe I notice how vivid the colors are. Maybe I notice that, on the other hand, and really conspicuously, it's only those colors. In other words, it's only squares, it's only colors. I'm not noticing figures, I'm not noticing textures or backgrounds, that kind of thing. So when it comes to Rothko, actually, we're confronted with this big sort of pain of color and shapes, and we've already reached a lot of conclusions, which is we can only see certain things, and those are the kinds of things we can see. And from there we can build. So another example would be Mondrian. I was totally stumped by Mondrian as a kid. He's a guy who does those little primary color squares, the red, the yellow, the blue, and they just look like little checker patterns. And I was like, what in heaven's name am I looking at here? I totally stupefied. I wasn't sure, am I supposed to play checkers on this thing or what? But basically, once again, we take a step back and we say, what can we say about the Mondrian? We could say, well, once again, we don't really have figures other than shapes, and only certain shapes. We can say, well, we only have certain colors, and those are the primary colors. You're not going to see any turquoise. You're not going to see any purple. It's always going to be red, yellow, or blue for a Mondrian. And at that point, we begin to think to ourselves, well, we really can describe a Mondrian, can't we? Maybe we can even start to say, well, maybe that's where he started too, and that's as far as he wanted to go. So again, I want to put forward that, to some degree, there's this intentionality with artists that they probably wanted to go to that point and not further as well, and that's why we're only seeing those things too, especially in the case of modern art. So basically, another example, well actually, I was from today seeing a lot of things, and a lot of hip art, Jackson Pollock, where Does anybody know who Jackson Pollock is? His paintings? Yeah, just the big, huge action paintings of paint everywhere, just, crazy chaotic patterns. And, someone asked me, what does that mean? I couldn't say, it's Genesis 10. No, that's too literal. There's nothing like that. But what we could see is maybe a little bit like with some of the art you guys were working with, some kind of an expression of emotion, maybe like when he was painting it, how broad the strokes were they violent, were they peaceful, what colors, things like that. Starting from that perspective and putting it together. And I don't know how you feel about your own works, but maybe you would want to be, your works be handled in the same way, that you would start with what you have and not say, well, that's not the Mona Lisa in 5 minutes. Well, no, it's not, but you do have something that you put down that expresses how you feel. Let's start with that and say where's the value there, and work forwards from there. And if there's a limit, maybe there's a limit. So anyway, I just want to talk a little bit about fear of art, and it's something that I have to say I grew up terrified of art. I was afraid I was going to be in a museum someday, and I was going to be with like my boss or something, and he was going to say, my, isn't that wonderful? And I was going to say, oh yeah, I know exactly what that means, and totally be stoked, Well, just remember, if you're confronted with something like that, don't be afraid. Step back, say to yourself, what can I see? What are the elements this has? And allow yourself to realize that maybe there's some limits because that's on purpose too. And I think you pretty much got a good start on interpreting art, not being afraid of it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I feel like that goes along really well with some of the questions I had heard when people are doing the mandalas when they're